I was just going to go through a couple of like tips here that may help some of you as you run into these situations. Johnny had one where he had done an underwritten Medicare supplement policy on someone who answered no to all the health questions. Then they did the phone interview with the company, answered no to all the health questions. One of the questions was, are you pending cataract surgery? The answer was no. Effective date's November 1st. Questions are answered like on October 5th. Well, October, whatever today is, or yesterday or whatever, doctors tell him after he's answered it and the supplement's been approved, hey, you need to have cataract surgery. But the supplement's already been approved. So, what does that mean? What if will the new supplement cover it? Does anybody know?
Yes.
It will, because as long as they answered the questions accurately at the time that they were asked, it doesn't matter. The effective date hasn't even happened yet, but it was approved based on actual information at the time. So he can go ahead and have that policy and it will pay for the cataracts. So that's just a scenario that we've run into a few times over the years where someone answers no to a health question, but before the other policy goes into effect, there's still something that comes up.
I had a bad experience with that. It was worse. It was, what was it, the lady that had the stroke the last day of the month?
Yeah.
And then we had to fight.
Is that the Mood Aetna one where they fought over who wanted to pay for it?
But she had a stroke. But the day before it went into effect,
Yeah.
and was in the hospital. Now I learned after they fought over that, if I find out something, I mean, this is just me personally, because I had to deal with that, I actually push the effective date. If something comes up, I say, well, let's push the effective date until just because I don't want any questions.
So if he's having the cataract surgery November 17th, you could potentially take the new company and say.
You don't have to.
But with that one, I don't think they're going to say anything about it. Even if they did, it's legally they have to pay for it.
Right.
So, but we did have that one. That was the worst one we ever had.
It burned me so
where
bad.
Aetna and Mutual of Omaha fought over it. But what happened was she had the stroke. She went into the hospital. What they were fighting over was the continuation of the hospitalization into the new supplement period, and they were trying to fight over who had to continue to pay for it because she was admitted under the coverage of the old supplement. I think Aetna ended up having to pay for it.
The continuation.
The continuation had to be paid. Whoever took it over at that time had to pay for. They had to pick up and go at that point. So. Anyway, that's an unusual scenario, but it does happen sometimes. So
I had that happen last year with a lady who had a cancer treatment right after her thing was approved.
So she was diagnosed with cancer in the interim.
They approved it, answered all the questions truthfully.
And they paid for it though, didn't they?
And then her daughter called and said, "Hey, are they still going to pay for this new one because we just now found this out?" And because the effective date already went into.
You're right enough of those med subs, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So anyway, it just happened to you really early on. But cataracts, they're not going to squabble over cataracts.
I was just using that as like the stroke thing. If that happened again to me, like something major,
yeah,
they're going to be in that. I'm gonna probably cancel the new supplement. I don't know.
But legally, they do have to pay for it. It's just annoying to the client when the companies are fighting over it and they're still getting a bill in the mail. So, other underwriting tips on Medicare supplements. I can go back and forth because I know some of you probably have questions on Medicare supplement underwriting, but some of the just common things. COPD is almost off limits for everybody but substandard level 2 AARP, and the extremely rare occasion that an Aetna underwritten company like Puritan, Capital Life, Aetna itself, all the Ascendos, Continental Life, will accept somebody who has COPD if they don't use tobacco, they're not using more than 2 inhalers, they don't use a nebulizer, and they're not prescribed oxygen. So it's pretty rare.
That's like first stage COPD.
That's like somebody's just got a touch of COPD.
They got a little touch of diabetes.
Little touch of COPD. But that's a true touch. Most people that say they have a touch of COPD also have a prescription for oxygen or they use tobacco. Those are that and the nebulizer gets me more than the inhalers probably. But anyway, a lot of people talk about that all the time. When I see COPD, I almost don't even want to submit them with an Aetna company, because 9 times out of 10, even if they tell you I'm not taking oxygen, it's on their prescription report.
Yep.
So once they've been prescribed it, they're gonna they pull a thing called a Milliman prescription report. It's gonna pull like 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on what they pull. They're gonna pull a big history, and they're gonna say, oh, oxygen, what were you prescribed oxygen for? Oh, COPD and oxygen, cancel. They decline it. So that's a pretty common one. Congestive heart failure. This is something that gets people where we've had a policy rescinded in the past. I did. The guy that had congestive heart failure. Something about congestive heart failure, Ricky had one too. Something about congestive heart failure, people don't know they have it. I don't know why. They don't know they have it. They don't know if it's been diagnosed. So you see somebody that's got a lot of heart surgery histories, like they're like, yeah, I had triple bypass and I've had this and that. Maybe prod them a little bit. Have you ever been diagnosed with congestive heart failure? Now, I mean, if they say no, I mean, all we can go on is what they say. And if they can have a lot of heart problems and still not have ever been diagnosed with congestive heart failure. But it is more common once you start seeing those. Congestive heart failure gets pretty difficult to also get through underwriting with med subs. So I just want to save you that. I think we had one the other day. This is a weird one. Guy, first thing he says when Nolan asked him the congestive heart failure question is, yes, I have it. Well, I went back in there and I asked him again, and he's like, no, I don't have it. I was like, okay, well, have you been diagnosed with it? They've never said congestive heart failure. Well, apparently it was on his record. So I don't know if he decided the appointment was turning in a direction he didn't want, so he just started changing his answer, or if he legitimately was never told it. But there are a lot of people that aren't. One time we had a policy, this was the Ricky one, was rescinded for congestive heart failure. But now policy rescission, whatever the appropriate word is for that, when that happens on a med sub, it's very uncommon. When it happens, they have to prove that the person lied about it or the agent lied about it. Because this is what happened with this one. This lady didn't know she had congestive heart failure. She did not lie. So they got a letter from the doctor that said he put congestive heart failure on her record, but he never told her that she had it. So they didn't rescind the policy.
Wow.
Because you can't be rescinded for the underwriting team not collecting the information and an 80-year-old lady never being told that she had something and it being buried in her medical record somewhere. So now they can attempt to, but you can fight it. So if you ever get a policy rescission or rescission letter, you can bring it to me. I can kind of walk you through what you need to do. Now, I've only had one that officially went through on a med sup, and I think the lady did lie about it. But every other one, we've been able to get them overturned. So, now we try to avoid ever having them by answering the questions as accurately as possible. But sometimes people tell you flat out no. And then they don't catch it on a medical record. Now, especially with automated underwriting, I've been seeing less of these for a while. It was actually Aetna that did every policy rescission. Somebody tell me how to say that word later. Every time we had one, it was Aetna, but now we've been writing more Aetna than ever, and I haven't had any issues. So I don't know. I think that maybe they wised up to the fact that most companies aren't practicing that very often, and it makes them look bad.
So can you, for those that are newer, will you touch on gabapentin, because that's a big one too?
Yeah, so gabapentin or Neuropathy or even Lyrica are a lot of times, the majority of times, prescribed for neuropathy. Aetna and all Aetna underwritten companies, the difference between Aetna and an Aetna underwritten company. There are Aetna companies that are on Aetna paper, Aetna CVS paper, Ascendo, Continental Life, American Continental, all the ones that are in the Aetna Senior Supplemental Portal. Then there are Aetna underwritten companies. These are companies that are reinsured by Aetna and TPA'd by them and underwritten, so it's the same health questions. But they're like Puritan, Capital Life, Union Security. So any at Southern, we don't have Southern Guarantee. That's that call center company. But they're the same thing. So all those companies ask specifically if you've been treated for neuropathy, whether it's related to diabetes or not. So they will decline for neuropathy. Most of the other ones will accept neuropathy if somebody's not diabetic. And 9 times out of 10, diabetes and neuropathy are together. So it's a diabetes and neuropathy question. Normally, if somebody has diabetes and neuropathy, most companies make it hard to get through. Some exceptions, Bankers Fidelity will accept it. Used to, a company called Everest would accept it, but they quit writing business with brokers after a while. And AARP will take it level 2, but even level 1, I don't know if they'll take it because it's diabetes with, well, they may take it level 1 because they have a question that says diabetes with circulatory problems. They don't say diabetes with neuropathy, so they would probably take it level 1 because they're not even going to ask about prescriptions. So that's kind of your really only holes is United Healthcare's level 1 rates potentially, and Bankers Fidelity on the diabetes and neuropathy. Can you think of any more, Amy, that do diabetes and neuropathy? Yeah. Okay. So if you see gabapentin and neuropathy, now there is an exception. Occasionally, somebody's taking this for like legitimate nerve damage, like somebody that had a car wreck. Like I had a buddy that he was in a hunting accident and got shot in the neck. He's fine, but he's got a lot of nerve damage in his neck. For a long time, they prescribed him gabapentin. Ended up taking him off of it because he was 32 and he was having ED. It's not a good time in life to have ED. So now he just smokes a lot of weed. Seems to do the same thing for him. So, but
Ricky Walker was put on gabapentin.
Yeah, hit a car wreck
and crushed his leg.
Tons of nerve damage in his leg. That's gabapentin is a use for that. It's just numbing the neurological
medication
stuff. It's a non-narcotic pain deal.
Some people take it for restless legs.
And so this is the biggest misnomer.
Mm-hmm.
People will say they're taking it for restless leg. If they don't know why they're taking it, and they're not diabetic, and you want to write them Aetna, I would try to just divert to another company. But you can put restless leg on there if that's what they think they're taking it for. I will tell you that a lot of times they'll say restless leg, but they have neuropathy diagnosis. It's very common. Most people don't know what they're taking stuff for, or they have these like just normal people understandings of like what they're taking stuff for. So the doctors do this. This is partially doctors' fault in my opinion, because they'll be like, well, "What is this for?" And the doctor's be like, "Oh, it's just restless leg," but it's really neuropathy. And on their medical record, they're writing neuropathy. But that restless leg thing is just like the old, like, I just got a restless leg. It's just something that normal people say. But a lot of times it's a legitimate neuropathy diagnosis. And it's caused me problems in the past where somebody said restless leg and they get that declined for neuropathy. So that's something to be careful for. Cancer diagnosis. Mutual of Omaha and Mutual of Omaha underwritten companies, mostly move, only have a 2-year look back for the last treatment for cancer. Sometimes what'll get you is somebody who was taking medication for cancer. Say they had breast cancer and then they had a mastectomy, and then they said they're cancer free, but you got to take letrozole or something like for the next 2 years.
Some of them even 5 years.
5 years. So sometimes that medication will be considered treatment, and so they'll be still taking that, and they'll be like, "Oh, I had a mastectomy over 2 years ago, and I'm fine," but they're still taking that letrozole or whatever, some cancer medication, and it can cause them to be knocked out. But typically, Moo is going to be your most cancer friendly because they only have a 24-month look back on treatment. So just find out if they're taking any cancer medications. If not, if the last treatment was over 2 years ago, should be good. There's a caveat to cancer. Prostate cancer is a weird one. People will get diagnosed with prostate cancer, and then they'll have it for 10 years, and they'll not be treated for it anymore. And so if a company says, in the last 3 years, have you been treated or diagnosed for cancer? They're taking no medications for it. They haven't been diagnosed with it in the last 3 years, and they haven't been treated for it. There are times where people with technical prostate cancer can get approved for a Medicare supplement. It's a really weird
I got
thing.
a client right now, I'm trying to get underwritten for future Omaha. I mean, his PSA level is 11, but they biopsied it, done several biopsies, no cancer. It's just
Yeah.
enlarged.
Yeah.
But like Edna will not, because he's 70, it can't be over
Yeah.
6.5.
Yeah, so the Aetna companies are going to specifically ask about the PSA levels. So elevated PSA levels past a certain point, depending on the age, can knock somebody out. Mutual of Omaha would probably not ask about that at all. They're just going to ask the kind of yes or no questions, but they could see something on a Milliman report and kind of prod. That's the thing about underwriting versus maybe final expense. Sometimes with MedSup underwriting, it's like I was telling Kirk the other day. With MedSup underwriting, they're worried about somebody being expensive to treat and keep alive. With life insurance, they're worried about, are they going to die? They don't care if it's expensive to keep them alive on life insurance, as long as there's a high likelihood they can keep them alive. With MedSups, to be honest, they don't care if they die. They care if they're going to keep them alive and it's going to be expensive. So you can kind of delineate when somebody's on the fence. But my assessment on it is, if they're on the fence and they can answer no, if they can make a good no answer to all the questions, and none of their prescriptions are on the declinable drug list for that company, submit them. I mean, if they can legitimately answer all the questions no, you can submit them. I've had people that got approved that I was like, didn't think would, and I've had people that I thought were slam dunks that got declined for something. So anyway, that's just my little underwriting.
Let's talk about rheumatoid arthritis too for just a second.
Oh yeah, all right.
What'd you find out on rheumatoid arthritis, or that methotrexate? Did you email the underwriter?
The guy said he didn't want to do it after all.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay, I was hoping you'd email the underwriter.
I was going to, but he
You
said.
should have emailed me anyway to find out.
So
What about blood thinner?
I was gonna forget now, he wasn't.
warfarin in itself is not a problem with most companies. It depends on what they're taking it for. How long? It's got a what?
Really small valves.
Was it psoriatic arthritis?
She was born that way.
So that's not a diagnosis. Like, there's probably like mitral valve prolapse or cardiomyopathy or atrial fibrillation. A lot of those people, if they have AFib on it and they're taking warfarin, if they've been taking the same dosage of warfarin and no changes in treatment for 24 months, 50 years, it's probably not going to be an issue. Warfarin in itself isn't an issue. Normally, if I see warfarin, I'm looking for what is the underlying issue,
Right.
and then trying to decide if they can get approved. So with as long as it's not on the declinable drug list, which I don't think warfarin alone is much of an issue anymore. It's just that when I see warfarin, I think they got something wrong with them, and I need to figure out what it is before I submit it anywhere. So same thing. So with rheumatoid arthritis, and this is, one that's my kryptonite. Because I forget to even ask about it. Used to, it seemed like we were hearing it and getting diagnosed. This is weird, like over time, it's like in phases. Now I'm hearing COPD so much, it's crazy. 2 years ago, it seemed like diabetes with insulin was killing me. When I first started, it seemed like rheumatoid arthritis. Everybody was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. I almost wonder if doctors just go in phases and like, I think everybody's got RA. No, that wasn't it. I think everybody's got this now. Because it just, for me, it seemed like that. I don't see a lot of RA diagnoses now, but so I end up not asking about them until I get into the application, and then I ask RA, and I'm like, crap. But a lot of times it depends on how they're treating the rheumatoid arthritis. What medication they're using, what dosage of medication, how long they've been treated for it, when they were diagnosed for it, with it. Some companies are really strict on RA. Some of them are a little lenient. In the past, we'd have like Philadelphia American or New Era that would be lenient on things like that, but now a lot of places they're not, popping up anymore. They're not as competitive. So with new companies, I think Bankers Fidelity is lenient on RA. Trying to think who else would be.
Mutual, we were just
Bankers
looking.
Fidelity is lenient on everything. It sounds like.
Bankers Fidelity is lenient. Used to be even more lenient.
Was it
Pricey.
mutual? They say no, as long as it's not,
That's the one
it's less than 20 times.
said you had COPD. This doesn't take anything for it.
Does he use tobacco?
Yes.
He's out.
It's still good.
I was looking at
That's what I thought. I tried to do it. I didn't run anything.
I'll tell you all.
They're still good, but
He's got Medicare and Medicaid.
it's
I'll
still-
tell you one other one that sneaks up. If you're writing Cigna, tobacco with diabetes, it's the only company that declines for it. Just a good little tip. We're not writing a lot of Cigna here right now, but if you get somebody you think, well, I think they could get approved with Cigna, but they can't get these other companies, and Cigna will decline for somebody having Plavix on the record at all. So declinable drug list. It's one of the only companies with Plavix on the declinable drug list by itself. So that's my underwriting tips and more. Hopefully that saves y'all a headache.